Distinguished guests, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Buddhist Council of New York's annual Buddhist Forum. No matter where you're calling in from, we want to wish you a very happy Lunar New Year, Nirvana Day, and are delighted to have you with us today in community for such an important session. My name is Steve Chu from Buddhist Tsuji Foundation, and I will be your host for today. This year, we'll be exploring the theme recovering from chaos and challenge in a time of change. TK, if you can go to the next slide for me, please. It's been a really difficult and challenging year for us all. In New York City alone, we've had over 600,000 cases of COVID since the outbreak, bringing with it not only the layer of human suffering that the disease has brought, but the isolation, the widening of social inequalities, and largely unaddressed mental health crises. This present moment continues to bear those challenges while challenging our collective communities to imagine new ways to come together to address these challenges and respond in a way that is even more just and equitable. Not only have we found this chaos and challenge within our external environment, we've also found it within our inner worlds as well. And perhaps more so now than ever, this is a moment for Buddhism and the teachings of the Buddha to shine and show the world what good can come forth when we are able to not only address our inner minds, but our external worlds and be of service to all sentient beings. We've seen communities of faith and different Buddhist traditions really rise up in this moment to not only respond to these disruptions in how we come together to worship by finding new and imaginative ways to have online services and online sermons, but also find ways to address the gaps where people were falling into and ensure that no one was being left behind in this moment. So today in this annual forum, we not only want to celebrate all the innovative ways we've been able to help each other, but share resources, insights, and thoughts as to how we can really continue to live and coexist with this current iteration of our crisis and find ways to build resilience and come together as a community to ensure that moving forward, we're even stronger together. This is a time of change, right? And it's one that is filled with impermanence. But if there's one thing we've learned, it's that with impermanence, there's both good and bad. And as communities of faith, I implore us all to look towards how we can find hope in this moment and build towards more resilience. We're delighted to have an illustrious group of panelists today with us to share a bunch of their insights and experiences that have really come forth from interacting with this challenge of COVID-19 and finding novel ways to respond to it. We're first going to hear from Yang Li, who serves as the charity project coordinator of Buddhist Tsuji Foundation. He'll kind of share with us how Tsuji has been responding to the pandemic and how they've been working to address food security for at-risk populations. Following which, we're delighted to have the two co-founders of the New York Zen Center for Contemplative Care with us, Sensei Koshin Paley Ellison and Sensei Robert Chodo Campbell, who will reflect with us on our overall theme of recovering from chaos and challenge in a time of change. Following that, we'll take some time to really break out and have some small, intimate conversations together, and then come back as a larger group to hear from Officer William Kwok, who serves as the Asian liaison in the Immigrant Outreach Unit at the New York City Police Department's Community Affairs Bureau, who's going to share with us some of resources that the New York City Police Department has that can not only help our communities of faith, but that can be there to ensure that we are not taken advantage of in this moment and ensure that we understand the importance of calling 911 and how the NCO program is really there to help communities that it covers. Finally, we'll have Deputy Commissioner Kadri Chowdhury from the New York City Commission on Human Rights, who will be sharing with us the protections under city human rights law and address how COVID-19 bias and stigma is affecting communities and what we can do as communities of faith to ensure that we protect our own people and all people. It's such a beautiful panel and group of speakers that we have lined up for you today, and we encourage you as you're listening to all of our speakers, if you have any questions, feel free to type them either publicly in the Zoom chat or privately by whispering to me, and I can ask the question on your behalf, so that during the each speaker will have like a Q&A section so that we have proper interaction time to learn from them and really hear what you're thinking about as well. So with that, I'll just make one final note that this meeting is recorded and that if you would like to have your image be saved, feel free to turn on your camera. Otherwise, if you're not comfortable with that, turn off your cameras. We'll have mics off while our speakers are sharing. So if you find yourself muted, it's because we muted you. But with that, I'll now pass it over to the president of the Buddhist Council of New York, James, to give us some opening remarks.
Thank you so much. You know, he's phenomenal, right? He's phenomenal. This guy is phenomenal. I love him, you know. It's where Buddhism has to go, right? It's very dynamic. He's engaging. And he said so many wonderful things. You know, he talked about the broad range of what the pandemic and the challenge of isolation has caused the Buddhist community. And that, however, he mentioned one thing that he said, I was listening. He talked about hope. He talked about hope, that we collectively can be a source of hope, not only for our own internal communities of the Buddhist community, but also for the greater society. You know, all I can say is that it's been a real challenge, but because of each one of you, and specifically some of the key groups that are actually on the phone, I mean, on this, I call the Zoom call. I'm getting to that age. I still call this like a telephone call with video. These Zoom contacts have actually helped us survive the pandemic. In a lot of ways, many communities were facing many challenges. The Tutsi Foundation, for example, had been feeding some of our community members. Some of our community members were lacking in funds. Some of our community members are still having questions with regards to vaccines. Some of our community members, thanks to, I see Venerable Nakagaki on the call here, had a lot of issues with regards to the census and what did that mean with regards to our community and our isolation, and whether that was going to cause too much government intervention into what we were doing. So it's been really an interesting time, but it's been an exciting time. And I think that going forward, we are laying the groundwork for Buddhism's expansion into the greater society. It's needed more so than ever before. We need to find ways to be compassionate, kind, joyful, and loving. And I think we're beginning to take those gracious steps together. So I'm very excited. I'm excited that Steve made me excited. You know, even in the midst of the pandemic, one of my family members is like suffering downstairs with COVID, but that's okay. I know I have my family here talking to me as well with you. So with that, I wanted to now introduce Venable Rifashi, one of the executive members on the Buddhist Council of New York, a vice president as well, and he will give us some opening meditation and prayer. Venerable Rifashi, thank you so much.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm glad to attend this Buddhist Council of New York annual forum, Buddhist Forum. This year is very special for all of us. We need to all on the Zoom meeting, every events mostly on the land. So that's physically we like isolate, but we come together on the land. We hope these challenges will recover. All of us will overcome these challenges. Now, let me take the 5 minutes, I think, or 3 minutes meditation, slightly meditation. We concentrate our breath in, stay, and out. And we will think about and thought why we have faced this pandemic, like what caused these challenges. We all Buddhists tell Buddhism in the social tell us everything have its cause and effect. So I need to think about what caused today's challenge. So we need to change it in the cause. So we will change the effect. So let's take a slightly meditation for let's use my little ball. We'll start. Okay, let's transfer the knowledge of this meditation to all who lose their lives. We hope then they birth on the pilgrim, celebrate the suffering from the death, and to who we still alive, we are all safe and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Venerable Refa, for grounding us in our faith and really raising that consciousness to the karmic ties that we have with both the pandemic and also to this moment where we find ourselves coming together and the causes and conditions that bring us together. I'm delighted now to introduce our first speaker of the day, Mr. Yang Li of the Buddhist Tzu Foundation, and he's going to give us some really great insights as to how Tzu has been responding to ensure food security. Yang has such a deep experience with disaster relief and working with Tzu. He's been affiliated with Tzu as a volunteer since 2009 in Singapore and has really been along this path and journey with Tzu, accruing so many different experiences that have led him to this moment of doing service as the charity project coordinator for Tzu New York, and I'm delighted to have him share some insights that have come forth in responding to this pandemic with all of you to take home and reflect upon as well.
Thanks, Steve. Let me share my screen real quick. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Buddhist Foundation, I would like to first give our gratitude for Buddhist Council to follow our work in the community and invite us to share our footprint. I'm very honored and frankly a bit frightened to speak in front of this many great bodhisattvas. I hope we could begin a lasting dialogue that will create harmony and blessing in our community and in the years to come. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Yang Li. I'm a staff member of Tzu Foundations in our Northeast region. Our region covers New York State and the entire New England area. So as Steve mentioned, I became a volunteer when I was working abroad in Shanghai. And long story short, I came to New York in 2015 and became a staff in 2018. So I'm very blessed and fortunate to go on a lot of disaster relief work with Tzu and able to see many forms of suffering. And actually, also experienced on myself, but that was also very great lessons. So today I'm going to share with you some of the relief work in Tzu New York has done during this pandemic, which would a little bit focus on the food insecurity. But first, I would like to take a moment. So as of yesterday, the death toll in the US is inch away from 500,000. Less than a month ago, on the day that, on the 1 year anniversary that we find a confirmed case in the United States, we have reached 400,000. So really want to take a moment to send our blessing to those who are affected by the virus, and for those who have their loved one currently affected or taken, our heart goes out to you, and may you find comfort and healing. In the beginning of this pandemic, our master has told us this is a great lesson for all of us. So the time has passed so quickly that it often feels that we don't have enough time to finish anything. However, in the midst of this pandemic, it feels as if the passage of time has become unbearably slow. As this pandemic continues to spread, it moves unpredictably and invisibly. Yet, it has shaken the world and brought about disorder around the globe. Whenever people discuss this virus, everyone is afraid and wonder when it's going to be over. So as we go about our ordinary lives, so we might lose our sense of directions. And if we ourselves become lost, we will not be able to be in harmony with others. So in the face of this virus, Master told us, fear will not help us. It is better to change our mindset and take good use of this time to improve our lives. So that's what Tzu has done. And I just want to share this part of her letters to all of us. And then the main thing is that, our thoughts and feelings are intangible. And before they are turning to actions, we cannot tell whether they are taking us in positive or negative directions. And through this presentation, I want to share with you that how many volunteers seize this opportunity and turn a lot of actions into very positive directions. So that's it. To food security. So this I will be sharing some of the events, the distribution that I have done, and a lot of them were focusing on individual actions through collective efforts. So the first story I would like to share is by one of our volunteers, Richard. He is a bakery owner and franchise owner, and also a long-term volunteer. So his bakery once was filled with customers, And in March, when New York was on pause, he's like his store's revenue was like decreased by half. However, despite the hardship that he's going through, he still pays his staff and pays the rent in full, and trying to make sure that people who he interact with is still being taken care of. And yet, even though when the traffic to the store was very low, and we can hear like the kitchen is really also been working. That's because since they don't have a lot of customers. So what I did is to pack a lot of bread, a lot of like different kind of the bread and cookies to donate it to like various organizations. So him and Jessica, also the person who works there, they're very grateful so they can help others at a time when so many people are struggling. So they all like so to them is that they use that opportunity to bring comfort and to make sure that all lives are taken care of, and also take care of our volunteers' a desire to help others. Because of them, many volunteers were able to walk into the communities and to bring comfort and relief to the people who have suffered, and also to themselves. And this one story is for a place we have been taking care of and visiting for 25 years, Holy Patterson Extended Care Facilities. So city volunteers in Long Island has been working with them and then to caring those elders for a very long time. And when this pandemic started, we're very concerned and how the well-being of this place. And yet, is to say this facility was hit really hard by the COVID-19. So from the beginning, the city volunteer has bring a lot of bread and a lot of different kind of like food and like cares to the residents in the place. And although when we are on pause and there's many kids and children, they cannot go out to do anything. So our volunteers actually use this moment to teach those kids that you can draw, you can write to the elders in our community. So that's what all those kids did. And then they kind of, it was a great thing for them to able to write those elders, because through all these actions, many elders feel they are healed and feel that there's something care about them. And then kids were able to make this positive comedic affinity with the people who they once cared. So Master Cheng, for many years, she kept on repeating the words, these two lines to us. Those who, she always said that if we could manage ourselves with love, means love and care for our own body, speech, and mind, everything is just a matter of mindset. So if we do well to manage ourselves with love, we will naturally uphold the preset and treat each other with kindness and respect. Her hope for city volunteers in this pandemic is to really live up to those words and then to bring cares for ourselves and then for the community. I just want to share this story. It's about we bring hot meal to the Jewish communities in the Long Island. So this is a very, to me, it's a very adorable story because while the community is doing for stay-at-home orders to help prevent the further spread of COVID-19, our head of public relations for the Long Island Youth Orchestra decided to use this time to inquire about some ways they could contribute to the community. So she sent a message to the group members regarding a low-income community near the CG Great Love Kindergarten in Long Island. So many of people in the community elders and in need of food because they cannot go out and then they have condition, and then those also affecting their mental health condition. So, and because of lack of funding, and then so Carol decide to fundraising among the group. So through their Bamboo Bank initiative, many children's, the youth orchestra's parents decided they wanted to help. So at the end of the day, raised about approximately $600 for the 60 meals for those people. And then, so basically they just add little by little, and then so they also create a great sharing moment between the parents and their children. So, and they're glad to be able to give more to the community in the time that when everybody seems to have to be isolated in themselves. So the first meal actually delivered occurred on May 15, after volunteer pick up the lunch boxes from the Golden Temple restaurant. So they immediately placed the name on the apartment number, and so they just sent it out to houses one by one. And next day, they actually received a letter from one of the community seniors to just thank them for able to brought them some Chinese food and then to give them hot meals. Because before that, most of the organizations and the food banks only providing cold meals. So for people that was very, it's hard for their mental health as well. And moving on is in May, this event for us is a significant event. This is one of the few early chances that we were able to reach out to the Ecuadorian communities in the Queens. And for this community, it's very special is because that this is actually Jackson Heights, where our media center used to be. Jackson Heights, for most of you guys know, was one of the hardest hit neighborhood in New York City, and also that was where I live now. So seeing how this community was ravaged through by the virus and hearing sirens every night is really painful. And then it was to me, it was such a beautiful thing that we were finally able to come to this neighborhood to bring some groceries. So, but what's special, also another special thing about this neighborhood is the common affinity that we have created. It began actually in 2017 when we were working Ecuadorian community with their relief, with the disaster relief in Ecuador. And Judge Carmen, she is New York State Supreme Court Justice. She started an organization, a nonprofit organization, because of pandemic, and then trying to help all the migrant workers. And we are able to connect with them, and then to bring more food and to help them on a monthly basis. So in the picture we have showed that there are many volunteers who are trying to pack like surgical masks, and we're trying to pack food for them. And then interesting, the day off, it was like pouring rain, and then it was then all the volunteers are just still very excited, and then decided we still wanted to push through this event from happening. So this is a month later that we went back to help this community again. And this event has another significant meaning is because one of the long-term volunteers for the Ecuadorian organizations, Nancy, she was the one who recovered from a severe symptom of COVID. And then she is a single mom of 2 children. And she also, she was one who to make a lot of things happen to go connect many different parties, and then to bring food and groceries to to the local residents. However, just a day, 2 days before this particular distribution, she was hit by a vehicle who was under influence and was suffered very badly. And that time when we had the distribution, she was in the critical room. But what is healing about this, what I think is healing about this event is that when we asking the volunteers that do you guys want to push over, or should we postpone, should we wait? We decided that it will be only appropriate to have this event to continue to happen, because it's something that we want to honor Nancy's effort, and also we understand that the suffering in the community doesn't stop because someone else has to take a break. And it was so it was a day that we pray for Nancy, and also that helps us to create a stronger tie with this Ecuadorian community, and we have created a lot more other efforts to join together and then to bring more aid to, so we have broader our scope because this partnership works. And because through that event, we also I want to talk about like, so in the April last year, as we remember, we have seen the case surge, like skyrocket, it's crazy. And then everybody was just don't know when it's gonna end. And by June, actually, when I read there's reports from the food bank, we find out that in April, 39% of the food pantries and soup kitchen had to be closed because of the lack of resources. And 92% of the closed food pantries are located in the most needed neighborhood. So that caused many people have to cross boroughs to find other food pantry to get food. And then when I'm looking at it, I realized that it's one of the major reasons how COVID spread. And for that, and with other reasons, we were able to broaden our footprint. So later on in July, we are starting food pantries in Manhattan, also in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, for the effort that we don't want people to travel this far, so they can stay local so we can bring the vegetable to them, they can stay local, and they will have less risk and chance to contract with the disease. And with this even also, where my personal experience with this is that I have on many occasions, I was bringing boxes of food back to my neighborhood and to put in the community fridge. As I was carrying those boxes, I have to stop from time to time walking to the site because I was so tired and my arm was kind of like just falling apart. And then I realized that, in the beginning of the pandemic, also, we were here that many food pantries are increasing the number of the meals they give out. So they might used to give 3 meals per person. They give out 9 meals per person. And I couldn't stop thinking about how those parents, how those people who had crossed boroughs, how they carry those food home. After they take out the buses, they have to walk so many places. So it was very grateful that the city volunteer was proactively and trying to overcome all obstacles, just to make sure that we can bring food closer to those residents, to those people who are in need. And with the Manhattan food pantries, For some odd reason, the first couple times that we did, we always meet pouring rain. And as you can see from the pictures, it didn't stop people from coming to get food. And it didn't stop our volunteer from wanting to be there to help. Even some of them actually get cold, caught a cold after. And with significant all those events, also we began to working with the U.S. Census, helping the immigrants to register and to make sure all our voices being heard. And also we have used those events to promote vegetarianism to like the community, and because this is the best way for us to make sure that we can create blessing and then to take care of minds.
Yang, I'm gonna have to stop you at there. I know you may have more of your presentation, but we're about at time. But thank you so much for sharing so many insights along the pathways of how Tzu Chi has been mobilizing public-private partnership, interfaith cooperation, intergenerational linkages, utilizing mutual aid frameworks to ensure that gaps had been addressed, and ensuring that we not only engaged with the immigrant and migrant communities, but that we empowered them to become agents of change in helping their own community and really thinking about those that we are serving. I'll maybe just quickly bounce one quick question to you with like 1 minute, 2 minutes on the clock. Looking forward for all of our members here at the Buddhist Council, what is Tzu Chi thinking of doing moving forward, and how can we be of support to Tzu Chi?
Well, there's a lot of things that we want to move forward, and for Tzu Chi that we are trying to create this family service center so we can have people to be helped like just one stop and then don't have to go through different agencies. And I would really love to see that, you know, we could like a Buddhist Council with all the members, all different parties, we can starting a conversation of how we could all work together, you know, to bring each organization's expertise, our strength, and then to create this the partnership that will not be able to just have a human approach as the center of our work, but also everything that we do can heal, can help this society to move forward. So that I'm really, really looking forward to the conversation. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And definitely right there with you, holistic, human-centered healing as something that we can come together to address. I'm delighted now to invite our second set of speakers. We're really grateful to have both co-founders of the New York Zen Center for Contemplative Care with us here today, Sensei Koshin Paley Ellison and Sensei Robert Chodo Campbell. They're going to be reflecting on our macro theme from the forum today around how we can ensure that we're recovering from chaos and challenge in a time of change. They're both super illustrious and highly accomplished individuals, and we're delighted to have them here to reflect with us. Yes.
Yeah, so thank you so much for the Buddhist Council, and we're just so deeply honored to be here to serve and to offer some of the things that how we've been working and some of the ways that we're moving forward. And so thankful to the Buddhist Council and the beautiful presentation and beautiful work of the Tzu Chi Foundation. Just what an honor to be as part of this group. So 1 year of COVID, a year of grief and mourning, overwhelm, and also for us, it's also been a year of intimacy. And we're curious about how each of you are and how you're feeling supported in yourselves, in your sanghas, and not feeling supported. And we're interested and we care. And for us, what care is needed is both for you and for others. And so many of us know how to give, and are we also receiving? So we've been thinking a lot about dana paramita, and really thinking about how giving and receiving has to have some equality in it. And so we're just wondering about all of us doing so much. And for us, the heart of what we call contemplative care is this giving and receiving equally. And when the COVID began, we felt so moved that we realized that this is exactly what we can partake in. We can be part of the medicine for these times. That the teachings that probably many of us, actually all of us, of the medicine of the Buddha of compassion and wisdom are really what we can bring. And today is, of course, very auspicious, as we all know, as the celebrating the parinirvana of Shakyamuni Buddha. And our practice is not to leave ourselves out of the care we're offering in our local and national and global neighborhoods. And so for us, it's the most important thing is that, again, that equality. So we'll share with you a few of the things that we've been doing and look forward to being in small group and conversation, because really that's where we do some beautiful work together.
So thank you. It's great to be here with you all amongst you. As Koshin mentioned, this for us, the art of contemplative care is about seeing what is needed in our communities, in our neighborhoods, and also in our own sanghas, our own communities. Just want to give you an outline of what we've been doing in this last year of COVID. Our team of chaplains and volunteers have been reaching out and working with the national occurring retirement community in Chelsea and on the Lower East Side. Meeting with, everything is on Zoom, of course, meeting with those seniors, mainly seniors who are living in isolation, who are not going outside for one reason or another, who are not able to communicate up until recently. And they're now getting iPhones and iPads. We're working with the New York City Council on this project to provide and to accomplish this mission, to allow each of those folks in isolation to not be so isolated. We're working also with Penn South. It's another naturally occurring retirement community, and Hudson Guild. In Chelsea alone, there are something like 17,000 elders over the age of 70. So that's in our neighborhood. Our chaplaincy program, accredited through ACPE, is working with National Palliative Care in Japan, or hospice care. We have been, our chaplains in our communities are doing a lot of bereavement work, one-on-one counseling. Actually, our bereavement work right now, I used to lead one group in 8-week cycles each year. Now we're running 4 groups concurrently, mainly for folks who have lost someone to COVID. Also now working with people who are living with COVID, in the short time that they are experiencing the effects of COVID, whether they pull through or not. So it's been a really challenging time and a really profoundly beautiful time for to really see the work, how it unfolds, and what we're doing in these sad times. But it's a real honor. So yeah.
So like Chodo was saying, we've been caring for and doing this spiritual and emotional support for seniors in our neighborhood in Chelsea, as well as in the Lower East Side, and companioning people. And Chodo's been leading these bereavement groups. And one of the amazing things about the bereavement groups is that they have people in the groups grieving together from Africa, from South America, from Europe, from Australia and Asia. So they're in all over the United States, of course. But what's been amazing is that this sense of global grief and how do we bring people together during this time, which is so much, part of the path is how do we relieve suffering, and we do that through the jewels of Buddha and Dharma and Sangha, bringing people together. So as Chodo mentioned, the ACPE program, so our accredited Buddhist program, has grown during this time, where we expected maybe it would shrink. And so more people, Buddhist practitioners, are coming to do our accredited clinical training, and which has been really pretty amazing. And as Chodo also said, that they have been leading the charge in the work with seniors, and as well as in the hospitals and nursing homes, mostly through telehealth. As well as we've been growing in our expanded, we have a Foundations in Contemplative Care program that has expanded also now internationally, where we're offering this training for anyone, for Buddhists mostly, who want to really figure out, how do I bring my practice into how I care for the world? And so that program has really expanded during that time, and we already have quite a list of people who are signing up for the next cohort. And as Chodo also mentioned, we're doing this work with the National Palliative Care and Hospice Organization of Japan, and we just finished a series of talks and trainings for the clinicians across Japan. And we're in the beginning conversations with the Buddhist Organization of Germany to work on actually establishing an accredited chaplaincy path for them, because they also, in this time of COVID, as we've all seen, that there's just a need for more skilled and better trained and accredited folks, so that they can provide that extra layer of spiritual and emotional support, which is just so important. And in case we didn't know before, now we really know that that's what's most important.
Mm-hmm. One of the most important groups that we are also working with are, of course, the doctors and clinicians in the hospitals, and those who are dealing with grief on the front lines and are so overwhelmed with what's happening in their own community. So we're working resilience. We're working with resilience training for usually the head of each department. Again, it's such profound work, and it's brand new to us. We haven't been through this. We haven't been through a pandemic like this in any of our lifetime. Anyone sitting here, this is the first time for each of us, and so it's a whole new territory. So not only folks, let's say regular folks who are dealing with COVID, but the professionals, the nurses, the doctors, the social workers, the clinicians are like, we don't know what to do. We don't know how to handle our grief when there's so much grief happening on the floors. People not able to see their relatives when they're dying. And so the clinicians, the doctors holding on to that. So how do we work with them to show them, or to at least open up conversations and ways in which to deal with this tremendous, tremendous grief that they're carrying for so many people, and sometimes in one day. It's kind of like it's a battle zone. That's what it feels like for some of these clinicians. It's like, boom, another one. So
yeah, and I think that one of the things that we've been doing these resilience trainings, that we just finished this research study on, that UMass Boston did the research on. And so that work of resilience is so important. And also we've been doing trainings for entire teams in major medical centers, from the administrators to the doctors to the sanitary workers. And so bringing everyone together and actually doing series of trainings. So bringing people together and using the Four Noble Truths as our model, and really getting people to understand what it means that each of us are struggling. And one of the main things that was so poignant in one of the last trainings we did last week for a medical center in Los Angeles was this, the administrator was like, I had no idea that the doctors were suffering so much.
And the janitor.
And the janitor said, I didn't know that the administrators are suffering so much. And the doctor said, I didn't know either of you two were suffering so much, because there's this isolation that people feel like each of them have to hold so much to stay strong through it. But we've been really, through our training, trying to open people up to sharing their struggle, sharing what's difficult, so that we can transform that into path, into a different way of being together. So the last thing we want to share is, because Steve was asking about the next steps. And so for us, the next step of what we've been planning over this time of COVID is a very robust training called the Fellowship in Contemplative Medicine, that is just going to be for frontline workers. And it's a 9-month training that we're very excited about, and we're about to launch in about a month, and it'll start in a few months. But we are really been thinking about and in our work with clinicians and frontline workers over this past year, really getting super clear about what's needed. And it's deeply Buddhist based and yet accessible to all. So we're very excited and looking forward to sharing that with folks when it launches in a few weeks. Yeah. So we are honored to be with you all. And we just want to, invite all of us to consider what is the support we need, because we're all doing so much. And so to not forget also to make sure you're also supporting yourselves. For us, it's one of the most important things, is also to, how can I get the support I need so that I can be more with you?
And at the core of everything we do is our practice.
Yeah.
Is us.
And nourishing a strong practice.
Yeah.
So thank you all so much. It's, again, an honor to be with you. May we continue to learn and grow together.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sensei Koshin, and thank you so much, Sensei Chodo, for really adding such a beautiful layer of reflections, thinking about how through your work we're able to train the trainers, ensure that frontline care workers have the resilience to be able to heal those who are most directly impacted by this pandemic. It's such a beautiful portrait of what is possible through the contemplative practice. And I'm so excited of all the initiatives that you've shared with us. I've taken some notes, and we'll definitely share it with our fellow community members after this call as well, to ensure that everyone's informed of those upcoming initiatives. I think definitely holding space to deal with trauma and grief in this moment is a very difficult task to ask of ourselves and of others. And we're so grateful that it's some of the beautiful work that you guys are doing. We'll now go to the breakout sessions, and I would like to invite James to kind of lead us and tee us into what we'll be discussing and how that format will proceed.
Hi, everybody. First of all, I wanted to say thank you so much to both of the speakers. It was amazing. One of the things you didn't know, Koshin and Chodo, is that we were trying to figure out a way to do contemplative care, end of life work in the council. We thought this was a really, really significant need. It goes all the way back to people like Venerable Nakagaki and Bhante Kandanya, who have actually been trained in that area. So I'm saying this, putting you guys on the spot right now, to say that, maybe we can have some people through the council work with you to be trained in an appropriate manner. The council doesn't have to do everything. We can support communities like yours who are doing the great work. And also I want to say thank you to Mr. Lee, who gave us about the Tutsi Foundation, because that's another thing that we like to do, to feed people who are in need. So these are two things we saw from both groups of speakers that were amazing and that need to be done. It was as if, this is what we needed to hear. So with that as the backdrop, with that as a backdrop, I'm going to try, and we're going to try to do a magical breakout session. We're going to try to break you guys up into two sections, 2 or 3 sections. We have about 2 or 3 people coming in right now. I'm actually letting them come in. And, you know, what we want to do is I'm going to try and give you some questions that, you know, the questions that I would ask for you to think about based upon the conversations that we've had. What challenges have you faced in your temple, center, or Sangha during the pandemic that you think you need help with, or how can you help with other people, you know, by breaking out of our little silos? And, you know, where, I think this is an appropriate one as well. Where do you stand with regards to the pandemic currently? You know, are you having everybody in your community being able to get vaccines or access to medicines? You know, are you getting the support that you need? And both of those will be the opening sessions questions. Again, let me just repeat those. What challenges have you faced at your temple, center, or Sangha during the pandemic? And the second one, where do you stand with regards to the pandemic and vaccines? So in other words, what things are coming up from, we would like to hear from you and for you to discuss those issues amongst yourselves. But of course, you're not limited to that. You can talk about anything that you heard in the first 2 sessions, because they were very impactful. I felt they were, at least. And I hope you did too. So let me break you up into those sections. So what you'll see on your screen in the breakout rooms, we'll do it this way. I'm going to, let me see what I can do. Can I assign you manually? I'll assign you automatically. And you'll see a little click there. For each of you, you'll see where you'll click and say, join the rooms. I'm going to, how many breakout rooms? We have 34. How many people? We should have, I think, 5. Let's say 6 breakout rooms. Does that make sense? 6 breakout rooms. All right. Let's see if it works. This is modern technology at its best, 21st century. Here we go. All right. Thank you.
There we go. Everyone should be back.
I think the warning sign of a 1 minute or something, no?
Yeah, they got it.
They got it? Oh,
they
I
got it.
didn't see it. Oh, okay.
1 minute automatically tells everyone in the room. So before we start back, I had an announcement to make that wasn't scheduled, but you know, I think it's an important announcement to make. I wanted to take a moment to announce the first annual Venerable Piatissa Award. For those who may not know who Venerable Piatissa was, he transitioned a little more than a year ago. He was a great Bodhisattva. Venerable Piatissa came to New York in about 1981, having been appointed as the president of the American Sri Lankan Buddhist Association. And then Venerable Piatissa founded the New York Buddhist Council. That's why we're here. And established the New York Buddhist Vihara also in 1981, which is the oldest Buddhist Vihara in the tri-state area. Venerable Piatissa was also the president of the Sri Lankan Sangha Council, vice president of the World Sangha Council of North America, executive committee member of the World Conference on Religion and Peace, and a faculty member of the New School University in Manhattan. And so what we did was we wanted to award someone who had exemplified his determination and his compassion for not only the Buddhist community, but for all of New York. And so it is with great honor and great privilege that I announce that this year's winner of this award is Reverend Dr. T. Kenjitsu Nakagaki. Dr. Nakagaki is a Buddhist priest ordained in the 750-year-old Chodo Shinshu tradition of Japanese Buddhism. He is president and founder of the Heiwa Peace and Reconciliation Foundation of New York, which he formed in 2018. He's also a current executive officer and, of course, the former president of the Buddhist Council of New York. He is receiving this award for all the things he has done on behalf of the Buddhist Council of New York, especially his recent work with NIDIS, New York, the Disaster Interfaith Services concerning the census 2020, and his tireless work to bring the Buddhist community together during this time of the deadly pandemic. The fact that Reverend Nakagaki is getting this award today on Nirvana Day, to me,
That's nice.
significant, because in many ways, when the Buddha transitioned, he gave his mission to each one of us as Buddhist practitioners. The award will say this. The plaque was supposed to come, but it hasn't arrived yet, but I want you to know what it says on it. It says, Venerable Kurandogoda Pietis Award 2021, awarded to the Reverend Dr. T. Kenjitsu Nakagaki for his outstanding work in exemplifying the living spirit of Buddhism, of make yourself the light, make the Dharma your light in daily affairs by putting others first. Palms together, the Buddhist Council of New York. And with that, Dr. Nakagaki, I'd like for you to say a few short words. You did not know this.
I didn't know.
But I think it was very, very important for us to take this time out to do this for you.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much. I don't know how you can make it secret. I didn't know anything about this kind of award existed, and then I don't know. It's just it's a kind of nice surprise, but at the same time, I thought I should know because I was going to ask you the question: what is that Pietisa's award? When you start talking about, I have no idea what you're talking about. But anyway, this is my really great pleasure because I really trust respect Venerable Pietisa. You've been working. My great pleasure to have such great model for the Buddhist community, and he has been really go all over the place, and then helps a lot of way to establish the Buddhist community. So I'm very grateful to be even be part of the partially what he did. I try to do the best that I can for my capacity, but I'm very grateful, and so thank you. Great honor to accept this award. So thank you very much for everyone, and I hope I can continue to support community, the Buddhist community, as much as I can. So thank you. Is that short enough? Thanks so much again.
That's beautiful. Since I live not far from you, I will make sure you will get the award, which is on its way in the next few.
Okay.
All right.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Nice.
So Steve, it's back to you. Back to you, Steve.
Beautiful. Congratulations, TK, for the award. And I think exemplifying the spirit of Venerable Pietisa and the spirit of selfless giving. And so with that, we're delighted to have another individual with us whose office and work exemplifies the spirit of putting others first and to care for others. We're delighted to have Officer William Kwok with us as our third speaker of the day to really reflect with us some updated and new resources that are coming out of the New York Police Department, where he serves as the Asian liaison in the Immigrant Outreach Unit for Community Affairs. So we're delighted to have him to really share with us a little bit about the NCO program and then the importance of calling 911 and some of the most latest scams that are happening with people taking advantage of this COVID moment to prey on the vulnerable. And with the hopes that really with these resources, we can go back into our own faith communities and share with those who are at risk how to protect ourselves. Officer Kwok.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Steve, for hosting this. Thank you very much, James, for inviting us. Before I start, I did want to bring my my inspector, she's my commanding officer, to the forefront so she can have a few words with everyone that's here. She is my commanding officer. She's the head of the Community Outreach Division, which is where I work. So let me present to you Deputy Inspector Perry first.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Kwok, for such a gracious introduction. He actually made it a little more than what it is, but I appreciate it. I just want to say thank you for everything that you do. I really enjoyed the Zen the Zen presentation. It was very informative, and I look forward to working with you guys. I know Kwok already told you guys about what we do, what we have to offer, and our door is open to you. We can't serve your community without you being a part of it. And I just want to let you know that we're here. You're in good hands with Officer Kwok. We also have Sergeant Siddiqui, who also is in charge of the Immigration Outreach Unit. So if there's anything else that you need or feel the need to reach out to us or want to even incorporate, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're here to protect and serve you. Thank you all, and I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Inspector. So as Steve mentioned, I'm going to be going over a few things today. I want to share with all these venerable head of their religious centers, and I want to present to you some information that I think is important to for you as well as the your congregation. I'm going to share my screen so that I can provide you with a little bit of information here. If I could get that access, that'd be great.
I believe James might have to make you co-host.
Okay.
We'll give it 1 second.
No problem.
I did make it multiple. Okay, so you should be able to do now.
Okay, that's
Beautiful.
perfect. Excellent. All right, so let's start with this. All right, so this is just a quick information workshop. As I mentioned before, I'm Police Officer Kwok. This is and my commanding officer is Deputy Inspector Perry, we all fall under the Community Affairs Bureau, which is under Bureau Chief Madry. He recently took over the post since the summertime. He's been excellent, and he wasn't able to join us today, but he's always out there. He's always helping. So I want people to know that he's there. Let me start at the beginning. We're gonna go over some of the unfortunate parts that have come out of not just come out of the pandemic, but the pandemic has in some ways exacerbated. For starters, phone scams are big, and they're still going on, and we're still seeing a lot of people fall victim to them. So I make it a point to make sure that you guys know about this, so that you can share this information with those that you preside over. First of all, they can come from known and unknown numbers. They don't have to necessarily just be unknown numbers. A lot of people think that, oh, unknown number, I can ignore it. But if you receive a number that actually is there or looks familiar, that can also be a scam. They can pretend to be a lot of different things. They can pretend that they're an agency, a government agency like the IRS or immigration. They can pretend that they're a utility company, Con Edison, National Grid. And more frequently, we're starting to see that they're pretending to be family members. And it's a shame because, those are the things that we want to trust. But, they take advantage of that. They prey on that. And in every one of these phone scams, there's always two things that you should always be looking to see when you see this. The first is that they always want you to feel a sense of urgency. They want you to feel like if you don't do something, something bad could happen. Or if you don't do something, maybe that loved one, something bad could happen to them. We see a lot of times these scammers pretending to be family members where they are saying that, oh, I'm in a hospital. I got into a car accident. I need money. And that brings me to the second part. In terms of the second part of this scam is they're always going to ask you for something of value. So as I said before, if your family member is injured, they're asking you for money for medical treatment, and then those are the two key things that they always look for. Now, with that in mind, one of the more frequent ones that I'm starting to see now is that we're seeing a lot more of this, especially this time of the year. It's the IRS scams. They start calling, telling you we're from the IRS. I need your information, or I need money from you because you owe from last year. The second one is, and this is where the pandemic, unfortunately, has kind of created a situation where it's made it worse. There are now starting to be certain times when they're calling to ask for your personal information, where they're saying, hey, I can sign you up to go take the vaccine. And when you get one of those, they try to pretend that, oh, if you give them your social security information, all that information, they'll be able to sign you up for a vaccine. Do not fall for those. Anytime you give away your personal information, you put yourself at risk, because now they are able to use that information to take money from you in the sense of creating false accounts. And then you're left holding the baggage of a false account that's been created and money's been withdrawn. So we really want you guys to be able to know to see these. If you get a phone call from a number that you don't know, or something is weird about it, don't pick up. That's the first step. We don't want you to be able to even communicate with them. But if you do end up communicating with them, the two factors that I said before, always look for those two things. If they're trying to make you think really quickly and do something very quickly and give them something quickly, take a moment to pause and stop, and then go back and think about that. If they're a family member, if they're professing to be a family member and they're telling you, hey, I'm a family member, you need to send me money. Take a moment and try to call that family member. Don't just automatically assume whatever number they're giving you is the right number. So these are little things that we want you to kind of pay attention, especially during these times. That brings me to the second thing. I was talking about public safety. be aware of your surroundings while in public. You know, a lot of people bury their head in their phone when they're in public. It's not only dangerous for you because of criminals, but it's also dangerous for you because of vehicular traffic, cars out there. If you're crossing the street and your face is buried in the phone, you're not going to see that car. And then unfortunately, if that vehicle, that driver is also paying attention to his phone instead of driving, now both of you are going to be in a situation where you don't want to be. So we really want you to pay attention to that, because criminals now are also looking for that. If you're buried in your phone, you're not paying attention, they can run up from behind you, grab your phone, and run off with that. We are not telling you that the New York City is this dangerous area where you can't go outside anymore, but you know, criminals are always looking for opportunities. So if you give them that opportunity, they're going to take it, and that'll create a situation where unfortunately bad things do happen. The second thing is, nowadays with less people on the streets, there are more, but there's not at the level that used to be. We want you, when you're going home at night, you know, you come back from work, you're going back to your temple, you're going back to, you know, your home, your residence. We want to make sure that you know that, I know we all know our little shortcuts to get there, but sometimes these criminals know those too. And if you try to take those, especially when it's a little bit later on at night, they might target you as a victim. So we really want you to try to stay on larger streets where there are other people who can help you, or possibly call the police, or even be witnesses to something if it should happen. So try to stay on those large streets. Now, the next thing is, and this is huge here, which is when you call 911, what should you be expecting? Before you call 911, the first thing that we always tell people is, if you're becoming a victim of a crime, don't fight with the criminal. If they want your things, let them take it. If you fight them, they have a weapon, they could potentially harm you. We really don't want you to do that. We want you to try to remain safe. It's property. Your health is most paramount here. If you do become the victim of a crime, we do want you to remember a few things. Try to remember what this person looks like. How tall are they? What gender are they? What color are their clothing? The reason for these is because as soon as you get the opportunity to call 911, you want you to be able to give them that information, because it lets our officers who are on the streets look for potential people who will fit that description. Now, when you call 911, we don't want you to be worried about, oh, I don't speak English very well, or I speak a different language, because as of Executive Order 120 that was signed into effect, there are actually 120 languages that we cover, so that when you call 911, you're able to speak with someone who speaks the language. So we don't want you to be holding yourself back from calling 911 because you're concerned that, oh, I don't speak the language and I won't be able to communicate. That's fine. Our officers who arrive at the location to help you, they also have the language line. They're also going to be able to use that to speak with you. But most important is, when officers arrive, they're going to take you into their vehicle and they're going to drive you around to try to see if we can find the person who committed the crime. Many times we have been successful in finding the person shortly afterwards. They're a few blocks away and we're able to find them. So we want you to know that we want you to call 911 so that we can try to catch these people. Now, why should you call 911? A lot of people don't understand the importance of it, or they're worried about it, and they don't realize that there is such an important reason why you do. There are multiple important reasons why you do. When you call 911, it increases the likelihood that this person who did this to you will be caught. And when they get caught and they get, then they go to trial and all these things, they're unable to commit additional crimes. They get held responsible for what they're doing, and it leaves them with the inability to target someone else you might be in care of, or your neighbors, from doing that. When you call 911, the police come into an area and they're going to be in the area for a while because they're taking reports and doing everything. And when you do that, the criminals also see that and they start to avoid that area because they don't want to be there. And you call 911, the criminals also know that, okay, this is not a place that I can just target because I might actually get caught. The police might actually be looking for me. And so they start to realize this is not an area that we want to stay in. And in doing so, it creates an environment that has less criminal presence, and it's beneficial to you to be able to do that. And this is huge, because one of the biggest things that we have is this underreporting, especially by communities that you may cover. I know as the Asian liaison, a lot of the Asian communities I cover, we have a tremendous issue of underreporting, and we really want people to understand that we're here to help you. We're here to assist in any way that we can, and anytime we can, that's what we want to do, because reduction of crime helps all of us. And as the inspector said before, we need your help. And if you don't let us know that something is going on in your community, we're not able to do our job to make it better for you as well. The last thing I want to cover over was resources that are available for you. They're called NCOs, otherwise known as Neighborhood Coordination Officers. These are actually officers that are specifically assigned to a specific area within the precinct. And they tend not to change very often. Unlike your patrol officers that can change from a day to day, these officers are always going to be the same officers for a very prolonged period of time. They serve as that liaison that's between your area and the precinct. If you talk to them, then they know about what's going on in your area, and they're able to talk to their commanding officer to make sure that we're assigning proper resources to your area to address conditions that you may have a problem with. In addition to that, these NCOs also host a meeting once every 3 months. Any residents that live in their sector, they can join in that meeting to voice any of their concerns, anything that they're not seeing, anything that they want to see. Maybe there's people who are drinking up the block. This is an opportunity for you to let them know that this is something that you want to be addressed. Now, how do you know who these NCOs are? That brings me to the next part. This is the best way for you to connect to it. There is a direct website that is written on there, but the easier way is if you go on Google and you look up, find your Build the Block meeting, it's one of the first things that pop up. And when that pops up, you're going to be able to enter your address in the map, and that map will then display your precinct, the sector that's being covered, as well as the police officers that are responsible as the NCOs for your area. They will have their email available so that you can contact them, as well as, find out when the next Build a Block meeting is. This is what the website looks like. On the thing, if you look at it, once you type in that address, you're going to see that there's a search for an address here. And once you type in that address, everything will pop up. But in addition, remember what I said about the 120 languages, there is a section up here in the red circle that shows that there is multiple languages, actually 120 languages again. So if you don't necessarily speak or read in English, there is an opportunity for you to translate it into your language so that you can read it and learn everything that you need to. This actually applies to all government websites that are within New York City. Just a little extra added information. Your NCOs are there to help you. We want you to be able to lean on them. I am your liaison to help out wherever I can, but the more direct route to where you are is going to come in the form of your neighborhood coordination officers, as well as your community affair officers that you have there. I welcome you to talk to them, to email them, so that they can be a tremendous resource to any conditions that you might have in your area. With that being said, that's more or less the end of my presentation, but I do have an email address that you can contact me. It's william.kwok@nypd.org. I welcome any questions that you might have, anything that I can assist you with. I remind everyone again that if you do have an emergency, please do dial 911 before you reach out to me. I can assist you, but if it's something that's immediate, we would prefer if you reach out to 911 so that you can get the immediate care and help that you would need at a time of distress at that point.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Officer Kwok, for so many fantastic resources and really raising awareness of the dangers that have emerged since the pandemic has really struck. We'll be really excited to not only share the recording, but potentially also your slides to our various Sanghas and communities so that we can then distribute it further. In terms of questions, I have two that have come in here that I'm very interested in asking. The first being, you mentioned that people have been falling prey to scams. Is there a particular unit that if we at our temples hear about a community member being scammed that we can refer them to? Would that be their NCO? What does that process look like?
All right, so to answer that question, typically, if you do fall victim to a scam, you don't have to necessarily look for a specific unit. Any officer, you can call 911, you can go down to a precinct and get your report taken. That way you can start the process that's needed to reclaim your, what's been lost from you. We do have a grand larceny unit, though much of these crimes do occur from necessarily overseas. that sort of thing. So we do our best to try to follow up on them, but typically the report is the beginning of most companies that reimburse your funds or stuff like that. They need that initial police report. So while there isn't a specific unit that's dedicated to it, you can go to any precinct and they'll take care of that report for you.
Fantastic. Definitely generating that initial police report being a key asset to
Yes.
ensure the rest of the process flows is huge. The second question coming in deals with our anti-Asian violence that's been really rising recently. I know a lot of our temples are comprised of largely Asian populations, and there's a sentiment of fear in the air right now. Is there anything from your office and the larger police department that you can share in terms of what's being done to ensure that our Asian communities are being safeguarded against this sentiment that's really not only risen because of COVID, but has been exacerbated by it?
Of course. So I'm glad that you brought that up. We actually did, in the midst of seeing a rising number of anti-Asian crimes, sped up because the NYPD was very interested in making sure that everyone is treated fairly and that no one gets targeted because of their race, creed, or age or gender. So we've always had a focus on that. The pandemic sort of just expedited the process where we created the Anti-Asian Hate Crimes Unit. Don't let the name fool you. It's not only meant for just pure hate crimes. It's meant for any time an Asian person gets victimized in any sort of way. I mentioned earlier that 911, not calling 911, not reporting the crimes is a tremendous issue that we see within the Chinese community. But there's also, not just the Chinese community, for that matter, for the Asian community overall and many immigrant communities. But what's also a tremendous issue is that we have situations where crimes are reported, but there's no follow-up by the victims, where after they report the crime, when detectives try to talk to them, they're not confident in following through. This is where the Anti-Asian Hate Crimes Unit kind of comes into place. They have many detectives who speak the language, who speak different Asian languages, so that they can communicate with these victims to ensure that they're comfortable in following through on their report. So there is a lot that's being done there. Of course, while I can't specifically go into detail, our district attorneys within the 5 boroughs are now taking this very seriously as well. I've been to a number of meetings, Zoom meetings, where they discuss the fact that when they receive these cases, they take a lot of interest in doing so. One of the last meetings I had was with the Brooklyn DA, and he has made it very, very clear that there is no tolerance and there's no room within our city for any individual to commit such a crime and not be held accountable for.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Officer Kwok, for that. Just as one final follow-up, I know a lot of the Asian communities fall into this trap of not wanting to report crimes because of immigration status. And with the formation of the Anti-Asian Hate Crimes Unit, it's fantastic to have officers that serve as a liaison, both in language and culture. Is there any sort of protections for individuals who may not necessarily have legal status, but are residing in New York City to be still be able to interact with this unit without fear of losing or being reported out for not having status?
I feel like you've been to a lot of our presentations at this point, because that's something that does come up quite frequently. And I'm actually glad that you brought it up, because I didn't really bring it up during my presentation, but I'm glad that you brought it up. So first of all, I'd like to clarify for all individuals that are watching this at this point in time. New York City actually has a Mayor's Executive Order 41. That particular executive order makes it unlawful for any government agency within New York City that falls under the New York City government umbrella to query about your immigration status when you're requesting assistance. That means if you walk into a precinct, if you walk into a New York City hospital, if you walk into a government-funded library, all these places, they cannot ask you about your immigration status if you're going in there requesting assistance with anything. So that's actually unlawful. So there's no concern whatsoever for not even just interacting with this unit. When you call 911, there should never be any query as to, well, what's your immigration status before assistance is rendered. Does that question come up later on? If it's relevant, yes, it may come up because it's relevant, but if it's not relevant, it will never be asked because it's actually unlawful to do so. And if you do receive any questions of that nature from a government agency, I welcome you to call 311 and file a complaint against that particular agency, because they should never be doing that in the first place.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for really the assurances and also elaborating into how we as our temples can assure those who come to us that they are protected in New York City. Delighted to have you and for all of your perspectives. I'll now pass it over the space to Deputy Commissioner Kajori Chowdhury from the New York City Commission on Human Rights, who will speak to us more on the protections that fall under the human rights laws here in New York City, and also talk a little bit more about how COVID-19 bias and stigma is impacting and affecting communities, and how we as faith communities can really continue to protect those that we serve.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Steve. Can everyone hear me clearly? Okay, perfect. Wonderful. So good afternoon, and thank you so much for the kind introductions. It is an honor and privilege to be invited to join the forum today. And a special thank you to dear friend TK and James for allowing some time for us to speak and for us to go after PD, because I will talk about some of the things that PD brought up as well. Before we begin, it is important that we talk a little bit about the history. And in our city's history, we have witnessed challenging times, and the light of new beginnings have often emerged from those troubling times. And our agency's birth is actually one such story. I'm going to take you back to 1943, following the Harlem race riots. The then mayor, Mayor LaGuardia, he created a committee on unity by an executive order. And to quote directly from the order, the intention of that committee was to make New York City a place where people of all races and religions may work and live side by side in harmony and have mutual respect for each other, and where democracy is a living reality. Fostering intergroup relations was the founding mandate of that committee back in the 1940s. With time, that committee evolved and gave birth to an agency with civil enforcement powers, the New York City Commission on Human Rights. And that's the agency that I'm representing here. And that mandate, fostering intergroup relations among diverse communities in New York City, is what that guides us even today. For those of you who are not familiar with us, if nothing today, please leave knowing that you and your temples and your congregation have rights in New York City. We are the city agency charged with educating communities and enforcing the robust city human rights law, a civil law, at the core of which it says you cannot be treated differently or less well because of your protected status. So no matter who you are, where you come from, how or who you worship, who you love, the New York City Commission on Human Rights is here to ensure that you can do all that without the fear of discrimination and bias. So what does this law cover? Ideally, I would have an hour-and-a-half long workshop to detail this out, but I don't have the time. That will be for another day. But I will talk about just the brief parts of the law. Excuse me. A quick version of it. The law itself covers areas of housing, employment, and public accommodations. And public accommodations are places where goods and services are available either for free or for payment. So a public park is a place of free public accommodation, whereas a grocery store is a place where there is some monetary exchange. It also has additional protections on discriminatory harassment and bias-based profiling by law enforcement. The city's law is the most robust anti-discrimination law in the country because of the sheer number of protections. There are 27 categories. So when we talk about civil rights law in general, we think about things like, race and religion and disability. And those are the core protections of civil rights law across. But the city's law is unique, and it covers special protected classes. So for example, in housing, presence of children is a protected class. In employment, your salary history is a protected class. So the city's law, again, it is one of the most robust civil rights law that we have in this country. And because it is a city law, our areas of jurisdiction are only within the 5 boroughs of the city. You don't have to live in the city, but the act of discrimination must have occurred within these 5 boroughs. In a month, it will be 1 year since the pandemic hit New York City. Black and brown communities have been devastated by its effects. I will quickly touch upon how we are addressing COVID-19 related discrimination, as well as bias and hate that we have seen that has affected especially Asian communities. So going a step back, we talked about the 3 main areas of the law, right? Housing, employment, public accommodation. So what does COVID-related discrimination look like in these areas? One thing to remember is all of us here have intersectional identities. There is an intersection of gender and race and religion and country of origin and others and so forth. The first thing to remember is based on current available information, we at the Commission consider actual or perceived infection with COVID-19 to be protected as a disability under the human rights law. So what cannot happen? So in a housing, in employment, in a place of public accommodation, the landlord, employer, or public accommodation provider cannot harass or discriminate against a tenant, an employee, or a customer because of fears or stigma around COVID-19 based on actual or perceived race, national origin, disability, or any other protected class. So, for example, even if landlords, employers, and business owners ensure that their policies and practices, including those implemented in response to COVID-19, they do not discriminate against or treat one category of people less well than the other because of their protected status. Each of these entities may take reasonable steps to protect the health and safety of their staff and residents, but it should not be arbitrary, and in doing so, it should follow recommendations of local, state, and federal public health authorities. They also have an ongoing duty to provide tenants and employees or customers with reasonable accommodations for disabilities, including those related to COVID-19, unless doing so possesses an undue hardship. As a best practice, we recommend engaging in a good faith cooperative dialogue between the entities. So what are some examples of such discrimination? What would it look like? So let's say a landlord decides that their Buddhist Asian American essential worker is posing a threat to the building because the person is going into work every day and maybe bringing back COVID-related infection. So then the landlord decides, okay, this person, because they are an essential worker, I'm going to have them pay more for the additional cleaning costs. That is not allowed. That's discrimination. Again, policies that are implemented to ensure the safety and health of residents cannot have a disparate impact on certain people. So for example, let's say a Cambodian American Buddhist senior has mobility issues and lives on the 2nd floor of a building and needs deliveries to be brought up to the door. but the housing, the landlord or the management company has decided to issue a no visitor policy, like deliveries have to be left out in the lobby. In this case, the landlord or the management company have to engage in a cooperative dialogue and allow for reasonable accommodation for the person with the disability who may require assistance to bring up the groceries to their door rather than leave it in the lobby. So each situation can be different, and we encourage landlords or employers or public accommodation providers to be flexible and to engage in good faith. It could be that a small business is putting together return to work protocols for employees and decides that they will only monitor tests on Asian employees. That's again discrimination. Tests cannot be administered in a discriminatory manner by testing certain employees because of their protected class, right? So this is one part of the law where we are seeing how COVID-19 is interpreted within the three areas of the law that I talked about. But this year, and as a question was raised right before, in terms of the uptick that we have seen across the city and across the nation in anti-Asian hate and bias. Starting as early as February of 2020, we were seeing instances where people perceived to be of East Asian origin were being targets of bias and hate in the city and being scapegoated for COVID-19. Since then, until December 31st of 2020, we have tracked all COVID-related bias and discrimination into the agency, and 205 were anti-Asian instances. Just to put this in perspective, in the same period, so February of 2019 to December of 2019, the inquiries of anti-Asian discrimination into our agency were only 30. So 30 in 2019, 2020, it's 205. We know pandemic is a stressful time and people are afraid, but scapegoating entire communities for the pandemic is not accepted. Unfortunately, this is not new, and every difficult incident in human history looks for a scapegoat. So moments of tragedy and fear often brings out the worst in people. So what did we do to address this uptick, this very, very terrible uptick? Earlier in the pandemic, we had launched an internal COVID-19 response unit to track and respond to cases of COVID-related bias and discrimination. In collaboration with our partners both in the city and community, we launched a series of community-focused solutions to address these instances, from multilingual bystander intervention training, weekly calls with API leaders to disseminate and receive information, multilingual town halls on how to report, and as folks were talking before me, the importance of reporting, when do you when do you call 311? What happens after you report? All that information was transmitted in Mandarin, Cantonese, Tagalog, Japanese, and so forth, Korean. We did a public education campaign using, again, multilingual community and ethnic media to spread awareness, and for the first time, put ads on social media like WeChat, which is used by the community, so that there is direct access to information and awareness. Most recently, we have had a public art campaign by artist Amanda Pingbodhikapya in her I Still Believe series. After I finish speaking, I'll put some links to in the chat that you can take a look. So you are the important faith leaders here. People listen to you, seek advice and guidance. I encourage you to invite us into your congregation. Our staff is multilingual and speak Mandarin, Cantonese, Taiwanese, Bengali, and many other languages. Also, as was said before me, we do not ask about immigration status. Everyone is protected under the law, irrespective of documentation. We're all city agencies are covered by the EO 41 that was referred to earlier. And more importantly, discrimination, if someone is undocumented and they feel that they are being discriminated because of their documentation status, there is a specific protected class under the law to cover that. And so no matter what someone's documentation status is, if they are a victim of discrimination or bias, they should report. What do you want to, if you want to learn more, what do you do? I will again put our information in the chat so that you can take a look. Bring us to your place of worship, your organization, your association. Proactive engagement can lead to ensuring that we are all doing our part to fight discrimination and bias. Part of recovery is to ensure that our most vulnerable communities are protected and their voices are uplifted. Bring the bystander intervention training that we have in Mandarin and Korean to your communities. Bring us there. In the past, I've had some long conversations with some of the leaders who are here today. And there were two, if people remember, there were two similar instances, one in Flushing and another in Chinatown, when someone went into a Buddhist temple and vandalized these two temples. They were separate incidents across time period, but it happened. And some of the leaders explained to me that a core tenet of Buddhism is forgiveness. And we understand and respect that. And in tune with it, we've worked diligently the last few years to approach harm from a restorative justice point of view. And the bystander intervention training, the bringing communities together in restorative circles to talk about the impact of the harm and to heal together are just some ways that we are looking into civil rights intervention when an incident of bias happens. I will leave us with a story.